Why did my father freeze when he realized what he just gave away to strangers? I walked into the garage and saw half of our belongings sitting on the driveway. My father was handing a cardboard box to a woman I had never seen before. She was loading it into her minivan, while her husband carried a lamp toward the trunk. Price tags were stuck on everything from old furniture to bins of my childhood toys. My grandmother had passed away 2 weeks ago, and apparently my father decided to purge her stuff immediately. I saw her rocking chair being lifted into a pickup truck by a man in a baseball cap. My chest tightened, and I dropped my backpack onto the concrete floor. The sound made my father turn around and wave at me like this was completely normal. A teenage girl was flipping through a stack of my grandmother's photo albums, and I felt my stomach lurch. My father had promised me we would sort through everything together this weekend. I pushed past a couple, examining an old dresser, and grabbed my father by the elbow. He pulled away and continued counting cash from a woman buying my grandmother's sewing machine. More cars were pulling up to the curb, and people were streaming onto our property. I spotted my grandmother's jewelry box sitting on a folding table with a $5 sticker on the lid. A man was already reaching for it, and I sprinted across the driveway to snatch it first. My fingers closed around the worn velvet just as his hand brushed mine. He gave me a dirty look, but I clutched it against my chest and backed away. My father shouted something about customer service, but I ignored him completely. A little boy was dragging my grandmother's quilt across the ground, and his mother was not stopping him. The sound of cash registers and haggling voices filled the air around me. I assumed my father had only put out the junk and the worthless things nobody wanted. I believed he would never sell anything that actually mattered without asking me first. My grandmother had raised me for 6 years while my parents worked overseas, and she meant everything to me. I opened the jewelry box expecting to find her important pieces safely inside. The velvet compartments were completely empty except for a receipt from a pawn shop dated 3 days ago. My hands started trembling so hard, the box nearly slipped from my grip. I looked up at my father, and he was watching a man carry away a wooden chest I recognized immediately. That chest had sat at the foot of my grandmother's bed for my entire life. She told me it contained letters from my grandfather who died before I was born. I screamed at the man to stop, but he was already loading it into his sedan. I ran toward the car, but the man slammed his trunk and locked the doors. My father grabbed my shoulder and spun me around with confusion all over his face. "What is wrong with you?" I pointed at the sedan pulling away from the curb, and my voice cracked. That chest had Grandpa's letters inside. My father's face went completely white, and his grip on my shoulder loosened. He staggered backward and bumped into the folding table, sending price tags scattering across the ground. I watched him pat his pockets looking for his phone with shaking hands. He never opened that chest because my grandmother kept it locked, and the key was hidden somewhere. His mouth was opening and closing, but no words were coming out. The sedan turned the corner and disappeared from our street entirely. My father dropped to his knees on the driveway and put both hands on his head. I grabbed his phone from the table and started scrolling through his sale listings from the past 3 days. He had sold over 40 items online before today even started. My grandmother's antique mirror was gone to someone in another state. Her wedding china had been picked up yesterday by a collector who drove 4 hours for it. I found a message thread where someone purchased a locked wooden box for $20 cash. The buyer said he was just going to break it open and use it for storage. My father was rocking back and forth now, making a sound I had never heard from him before. A woman approached asking about the rocking chair price, and I screamed at her to leave. People started packing up and walking away quickly while my father stayed frozen on the ground. Those letters were the only record of my grandfather's voice that existed in the world. He wrote them to my grandmother during the 3 years he served overseas before his death. She read them to me when I was small, and I fell asleep to stories about a man I would never meet. My father never knew what was inside because his mother kept that chest private her entire life. The key was hidden inside the jewelry box he pawned for $60 3 days earlier. I found the pawn shop receipt and called them, but the box had already been sold to someone else. My grandfather's letters were scattered across 2 different strangers now, with no way to find either of them. My father finally looked up at me with tears streaming down his face and snot dripping from his nose. I stepped backward away from him and felt something crack under my shoe. It was the price tag that had been stuck to my grandmother's rocking chair. I picked it up and saw he had sold it for $15. My father reached out his hand toward me, but I turned and walked into the house. The screen door slammed shut behind me, and I heard him sobbing alone on the empty driveway.